Hello everyone and welcome back to the Successfully Balanced podcast. I am your host Aria and I am so grateful and so happy to have you here today. Thank you so much for tuning in and I truly hope that you get something out of this podcast. Whether you are an athlete, an executive, an entrepreneur, a founder, content creator, whatever you are, if you're an ambitious woman, you are in the right place and I am so glad that you're here. So today we're talking about the 12-week goal setting framework for unbreakable execution. This is basically the framework that I give to all my mentees and it is in a lot of the products that I sell, but I'm going to be breaking it down for you for free today. And this is the framework that I have personally used to grow almost 100,000 followers, to have a podcast with over 30,000 streams, to become an award-winning founder and launch a business in 1 year and maintain a 6.9 out of 7 GPA whilst launching that startup. And just everything that I have ever achieved has come down to this framework. So I am so excited to be teaching it to you guys. And I will reference this a couple of times, but I've also put down a physical framework that you can download in the description and you can use it on Canva to pretty much apply exactly like everything I say in this episode, and you can start just working towards your goals and achieving them so much faster. Before we get into it, it would mean the world to me if you could rate this podcast. If you're on Spotify, it takes you literally 10 seconds. Just go to the Spotify show main page and there should be a little star to rate this show, or I think you go in more options, rate this show. And ideally, if you could rate it a 5-star, that would be amazing and helps this podcast get reached to even more people. And that would just mean the world to me, because then we can help even more ambitious women to achieve their goals, scale their businesses, whatever it is that they have in mind, but do it in a healthy and sustainable way. If you're on YouTube as well, if you want to hear more, then subscribe and like this video and leave a comment and tell me something about this episode that you found really resonated with you. As I do at the start of every episode, I want to give you guys an example of something that I've been doing this week to, one, work towards my goals and also have more balance, to really model the concept of successfully balanced. So in terms of working towards my goals, this week was actually I did a business pitch and I had done a couple of these before, but I don't want to say the word failed, but I didn't make it through to the next round. So that was quite disheartening and it really made me stop and consider what I'm doing in the business. I just felt very lost and it wasn't a fun time. I think I'm feeling a lot better now, but that was on Wednesday night and definitely not feeling the best after that. But it's okay, because something that I have done to get closer to my goals is I've actually mapped out really clearly my personal brand. So everything from my values and my mission with this personal brand, which is to help high-performing women just like you listening to this to achieve your goals in a healthy and sustainable way. That is my core mission of everything that I do, really, all the way down to my fonts, my colors, my clothing style, and really just have a look at my strategy for rebranding and getting that all consistent. Because what I want to do, and I hope that you guys start to notice this across my platforms, is that I really want to create a world that when you guys are either scrolling on my feed or come onto my YouTube channel or whatever, that it feels consistent. And when you step into this world, you want to be here, because I want to give to you everything that I can. And I'm just want to make that world for you that you can step into and recognize and feel familiar across all platforms. And for a couple of weeks, I have been doing a newsletter, which has been really interesting because it's the first kind of written thing that I've done. Usually it's video or just spoken audio podcast, whatever. But I think actually writing it out and putting an email has been really nice. And I hope that my email subscribers think that too. And then in terms of my balance this week, on Friday night, I went to the beach with my boyfriend and we got dinner and it was so lovely. And it's just one of my favorite ways to end the week is just to go to the beach and just enjoy how peaceful it is. And then also later this afternoon, I am catching up with my friend. We're going out for burgers for lunch, which I'm so excited about because we haven't seen each other in months and it's been way too long. And then after that, I'm getting curry with my brother and my grandparents and we're going out there having dinner. And it's just gonna be a really wholesome afternoon. So I'm really excited for that. So let's get into the actual episode. So we're talking about 12-week goal setting framework to lock in and achieve your goals. Because I think a lot of us, especially at the start of the year, we set these massive goals and we make them so big and we make them so long-term that one, our brain doesn't have any urgency to get them done, but also they just feel unrealistic because they're so far in the future. And so the reason that we say 12 weeks is because one, that's every quarter. And if you're a business person, we're thinking quarters. And also it gives your brain a near-term enough goal so that instead of seeing 12 months in the future, because your brain can procrastinate about the urgency of that. Whereas if it's in 12 weeks, or that's roughly 3 months, it goes, oh, wait, that's actually really soon. We actually need to kick into gear and do something. And also another reason is because when you have those big ambitious yearly goals, we will go through this in a second, but if you break them into quarters and you focus on one quarter of it at a time, then when you stack those 4 quarters up, you're a lot more likely to achieve that big goal that you set for yourself at the end of the year, rather than just going blindly into it and trying to achieve the whole goal at once. Now, today is a very hands-on episode. As I mentioned at the start, I am basically giving you right now what I help a lot of my mentees with, and I am giving you this for free. So what I want you to do to make sure that you get the most out of this episode is grab a piece of paper, and I want you to actually physically do the activities and the exercises that I'm going through with you. And if you don't want to use a piece of paper, or you just want to do it more properly, there is a template in the description of this episode so that you can use that, and I feel like that's just gonna be a lot easier for you to just use that framework. That framework is also completely free, guys, so you don't need to worry about that. So step 1 of this whole goal setting framework is to figure out what are your long-term yearly goals. Most of us have already done these. I think if you're listening to this episode and you're ambitious enough, you are most likely setting yearly goals. I'm not doubting that, but I want you to really write down all of the big picture goals that you have, because this will help us match our 12-week goals to our long-term massive goals. For example, if you have a really big goal of running a marathon, I'm probably going to use this example a few times throughout this episode, then that means that your quarter goals are actually going to get you closer to that long-term goal. Whereas if you just chose a goal that's a bit smaller, what is it counting toward? You want to compound your quarters into a big long-term goal, because really those little successes add up into a really big amount of success. Now, step 2 is to choose your top 3. Do not choose any more than this. I know you are ambitious because you're listening to this, and I'm corporate to this myself, wanting to improve and grow in so many areas. But the fact is that if you are splitting your focus among more than 3 areas, then anything else that you try to do other than your top 3 priorities is just a distraction from actually growing in the most important areas to you. So choose 3. Anything else, they can be a maintenance phase. And the most important thing is consistent progress. And if we have our attention in too many different areas, it's just impossible. We are only human. We cannot be consistent in every single area of our life at a time. I don't know if you've ever done one of those things where it's like a circle and you've got different areas for each sort of section of your life, like maybe family, health, work, whatever. And you color in up the circle how far you, like how good you are in those areas. I don't think anyone is ever going to be a 10 on all areas, because one, that's just unrealistic, but also if you are a 10 in one area, then ultimately anything that you do is taking away from something else. So if you're spending more time with your family, then that's less time at work. Or if you're spending more time at work, that's less time with your family. What I would recommend is to try and be an 8 across all areas. And then the ones that you particularly want to excel at, those are the ones you're putting in extra effort, but that is going to have to take from something else. If you're training to run a marathon, that is going to take away a bit of extra time that you might have gone out for brunch with your friends. It's just the reality. We only have 24 hours in a day. We can't just magically make more time. So whatever your priority is, you need to understand that it is going to take away from something else, and you need to be prepared to sacrifice something else. One thing that I will never sacrifice is my health, no matter what. If I want to get more followers, I am not skipping my gym session to do that. I am not skipping having a healthy lunch to do that. It is just not a negotiable for me, because I know that if I sacrifice my health, then nothing else matters. So what I'm trying to say out of all of this is that choose your top 3 priorities. Do not sacrifice your health, and understand that it is going to take away from other things, but you need to be prepared to let those things just sit in maintenance and not grow in all areas at once. Step 4, I did allude to this before, but you want to now break those 3 most important goals into quarters. So with the marathon example, which by the way, it is easier to do with numerical goals, but for example, it's more of action-based steps to get to that goal. So for example, if you want to deliver a workshop, one step might be contacting someone to deliver the workshop at their facility or whatever. It might be preparing the presentation, practicing the speech. Get all of those steps, and obviously some of them will take more or less time. Split that into quarters, if that makes sense. With the marathon example though, it is 42 kilometers, which let's just say 40 kilometers for the sake of this. If you break it into quarters, that's 10 kilometers per quarter. And so if you're already running 10 kilometers, then in one quarter, in 12 weeks, you would aim to run from 10 kilometers to 20 kilometers. And then obviously the next quarter would be 20 kilometers to 30 kilometers, and then the final one would be 30 to 40. And then at that point, you've achieved your long-term goal. Now, step 5, this one I want you to actually do, whether it is on a piece of paper or you download the one that I've made for you, but it is to create a literal board of your rectangle, and I want you to divide it into 3 columns and dedicate a column to each of those goals. If you downloaded the template, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't though, just get a piece of paper, put it landscape and divide it into 3. Then write down your goals at the top of each column. And then step 6 is you want to make your goals extremely specific. So I am sure that you have heard of the SMART goal setting framework by now. If you haven't heard of it for whatever reason, it is basically specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound. Now, one quick note of warning: to make sure that your goal is actually realistic, consider where you currently are and then add 25%. Because I used to think, like, I want to be earning 10 times what I currently am this year. And then I try and do that and I'd be like, all right, literally it's just not possible right now. Not saying that's not possible in the future, but to make sure that your goals are really realistic is to take where you currently are and add 25%. So just say, as a numerical example, if you're currently earning $1,000 a week, then perhaps you could try to earn 1,250. Depending on your situation, obviously it's going to be more or less or whatever. That's just an example to show you how it works, but you don't want to stretch yourself too far, because if you get a few weeks in and you think, oh my goodness, I am really pushing to, like, I can't do it, it's actually really difficult, you're going to get really disheartened and you're not going to be able to progress any further, and chances are you're going to end up exactly where you are to begin with. So it's much better to underestimate what you can do and then overachieve that than stretch yourself too far and underachieve. However, I will say there is psychology to prove against that, because a lot of people say that the higher your expectations, the higher your results. And that is also true. If you expect that you are going to, I don't know, do really well and compete in some event or whatever, then your actions are going to follow through with that, because you have that pressure of achieving higher. But I feel like I don't really have a full consensus on this, but you don't want to set your goals too high that if you underachieve them, you're going to get upset, and you don't want to set them too low that you're just not going to achieve anything. So you can find that balance for yourself. It may take you a few quarters to get that right, but I like to go with the 25% rule. All right, step 7 is to consider why it's important to you. So you've got the little headers in the columns. Under that, you have your specific goals, so really define all of the specificities of it. And then under that, I want you to write why this goal is important to you. And don't just stop at the superficial why. If it's running a marathon, it's not just like, oh, because I think it's cool to run a marathon. No, why is that? And ask yourself why 5 times. And then eventually, for me, it's because I want to prove to myself that I can do things that are difficult. Like, I don't care about getting a fast time. I don't care about anyone thinking like, oh my god, that's so cool, she ran a marathon. No, for me, I want to prove to myself that I can do it, because guys, I hate running. I really don't like it, but I want to prove to myself that I can do it even though I don't like it, and even though it's really difficult, and when I'm running my feet hurt and my legs hurt and I just don't feel like doing it, I want to prove to myself that I can do it regardless. That is my why. So think about your why for each of your goals, and if you're really struggling to find a why, then maybe consider, is this goal actually important to me? Or has someone else just told me it's important, or do I just think that it's something I should do? If you're struggling to find a, maybe it's actually time to consider, is this goal actually important to you? Because if it's not, then you probably just won't even achieve it. Step 8, this one is probably the funnest part, but that is to find a photo to represent each of your goals. Go onto Pinterest, search up keywords, and when you find the photo, it's not necessarily about how similar it is to the actual goal. If it's running 20 kilometers, if there's actually 20 kilometers on the watch or whatever, it's more about, can you feel yourself being in that photo? Can you visualize what it feels like to be in that photo achieving that goal? Because if there's just a number like 20k, it's really hard to feel what that feels like. But if you got a photo of a girl running and she looks really free and happy and she's whatever, and you can actually sit yourself in that position and feel that freedom and that enjoyment of running, if you can feel yourself being in that photo, that is what you want. So you want to find photos that represent the feeling of achieving that goal. I want you to feel inspired by looking at that photo. All right, step 9 is to create a 12-week checkpoint list. This, I think, is one of the most important bits, because it's mini milestones and you can check in on your progress. Because I used to set a goal and I just wouldn't even track my progress. And how am I meant to know if I'm going to achieve it? It's halfway through the timeline, but I don't even know if I'm halfway through achieving it, you know what I'm saying? So basically break down your quarter goals into 12 individual milestones. For example, if you're running from 10 to 20 kilometers, that would look like 10 kilometers one week, 11 the next week, 12 kilometers the next week. You get the idea until 20. And obviously there'll be some repeats in this situation, but you get what I'm saying. You want to break it down into individual weekly milestones. And then you can basically track that and think, okay, have I ran 14Ks this week? If not, well, I'm gonna have to do it next week, or whatever it is that works best for you. And you really want to just keep clocking over 1 week at a time, because for example, this quarter I was doing, I think, was it 2Ks to 10Ks? So currently this week I ran 5Ks for the second time, and then next week I'll be running 6Ks, and the week after it'll be 7Ks, and then eventually I'll get to 10Ks, and then next quarter is when I'll do 10 to 20 kilometers. And it's also just really satisfying to check that off and be like, yes, I've made progress, rather than just guessing if you've made progress. You can actually physically see it. And even better yet, if you can make a little chart and have either cross off the days that you've done it, or have a physical chart of your progress, that is so motivating. Step 10, write down the changes that you need to make to achieve it. So whether that is daily habits or just mindset shifts, things like that. So for example, if you want to save more money, then maybe that involves packing your lunch from home rather than buying it at work every single day. Or for example, with my example for running a marathon, I have switched up my Tuesday mornings and my Saturday morning gym sessions with a run, and Friday morning I had run club anyway. And so I'll do a short run on Tuesdays and Fridays, and then I'll do a long run on Saturdays, where usually I would just do resistance training or something like that. That is an example of a change that I needed to make. Because ultimately, you cannot expect to do the same thing that you're currently doing and hope to get different results. It just does not work. You can't put in the same input and expect different output. It's just not how the universe works. If you want something you've never had before, you need to do something you've never done before. All right? A little bit of pep talk for you. Now, with these changes, you need to embed these habits into your daily or weekly schedule. When are you actually going to do the activities that will get you there? Because it's really nice to be like, I'm going to go for a run. When are you going to do it? When? And how long for? And how are you going to do that? So actually get up your calendar and look at it and think, when am I actually going to fit in the action that it takes to get to this goal? For example, if you're writing a book, maybe you could block out an hour on a Tuesday to plan a chapter, and then maybe 2 hours on a Friday to write that chapter, and then an hour on Saturday to edit. Also, I would say for the first 3 weeks of embedding a new habit, it can be a really good idea to use a habit tracker and manually tick off the days that you do that habit. The reason I say 21 days or 3 weeks is because that, apparently, according to science, is how long it takes for that new habit to become a default action in your routine. Because there is a lot of friction at the start, we want to remove as much friction as possible. If you guys haven't read Atomic Habits yet, you just got to get onto it. You just have to. We want to remove as much friction as possible, and also do something called habit stacking, which is where you take an existing habit and you link on a new healthy habit that you want to do with that habit. So for example, if you're training for a marathon, you need to get stronger calves, so you're running, then when you brush your teeth in the morning, that teeth brushing is something that I hope you do every day. And when you do that, that's a trigger for you to do your calf raises. And that pretty much just sets off a reaction of that habit. Step 12, this is a little bit similar to the previous step, but I want you to schedule in a weekly check-in. This is when you're going to analyze your progress and decide if you've reached the milestones, and also decide if there's anything that you need to change about how you're going about your goals. Because if your training plan that you set out in week 1 is actually not working for you in week 3 because of whatever reason, then think, what can I adapt to get to my goal? Don't change your goal, just change how you get to that goal if things are happening in your life. And it is okay to make changes, and it's okay to sometimes back off if you feel like it's too much, but don't give up on your goal just because it's getting difficult. You may just need to change something about your current plan and your current way of going about it. And step 13 is to celebrate when you achieve it, because often we achieve a goal and then we just immediately think, okay, what's next? But I want you to actually celebrate and be proud of yourself because you put in that effort for 12 weeks straight and you will have achieved that goal. And so you want to actually do something to signify you achieving that goal, not just a little pat on the back, but actually, like, I don't know, go out to the beach and get a smoothie and sit on the beach and think, damn, I did that. I'm really proud of myself. Because part of fueling your next success is to actually sit in that feeling of accomplishment of currently achieving whatever you've achieved, because that gives you the fuel of knowing how good it feels to achieve something to then achieve whatever's next, rather than just brushing it aside and just going straight on to the next thing. I believe that is all I have for you guys this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. I have enjoyed putting it together. And if you haven't already, the template that I've given for you guys is down in the episode description. It is completely free. You can download it instantly, and I'm so excited for you to try it. If you enjoyed this episode, send me a DM on Instagram and just tell me something that resonated with you, and if it's changed your life in any way, that would literally mean the world to me, and I will personally congratulate you on your success. And also, if you enjoyed it, please give it a rating, as I say in every single episode, because it really just helps the Spotify algorithm so much to get this podcast shared to even more people. And if you're on YouTube, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll be so grateful. I hope you guys had the most amazing week, because I believe this is going to come out on a Monday. Have the best week ahead, and I can't wait to see you in next week's episode. Bye bye.